The calculus teacher pointed to the parent working maintenance as a joke in front of the class. But when the woman quietly walked up to the board and solved the problem better than anyone expected, it didn't just silence the room. It changed the way the entire school saw her. It was fourth period on a Thursday at Lincoln High in South Bend, Indiana, the kind of day where students glance at the clock more than they do the board. Mr. Thompson, the school's calculus teacher, had a reputation: sharp-tongued, impatient, and always quick with sarcasm. He wasn't particularly liked, but he wasn't hated either, just endured. The classroom felt dry. Equations filled the whiteboard. The air smelled faintly of eraser dust and worn-out sneakers. Phones were tucked under desks, some pretending to pay attention, others staring out the window. Then something happened that would shift the atmosphere like a sudden wind. As Mr. Thompson scribbled another derivative on the board, a faint squeak echoed from the hallway. The parent was nearby, mopping outside the classroom with her usual slow, steady rhythm. Thompson paused mid-sentence, glanced at the door, and cracked a half-smile. Without warning, he turned to the class and pointed toward the hallway. "Well, look who's here." "Mrs. Harper, tell me, you think you can solve this one?" He tapped the board with the back of his marker, like he was issuing a challenge on a game show. Laughter broke out. Not roaring, but the kind that makes you shift in your seat because you're not sure if it's okay. Mr. Thompson smirked again. "Come on, Evelyn, you always look like you've got something on your mind." Evelyn Harper, the 48-year-old parent working maintenance, stood in the hallway with her mop in hand. She wore the same navy blue uniform she always did, clean but faded, with E. Harper stitched over her chest pocket. She didn't blink, didn't flinch. She just looked into the room. Then, slowly, she stepped in. The mop leaned against the wall. A few students sat up straighter. Some thought she was about to say something smart back and leave. Maybe she'd crack a joke or just walk away. But she didn't. Instead, Evelyn walked to the front of the room. "You mind?" she asked calmly, gesturing to the board. Thompson raised his brows. "Be my guest." A few phones slid quietly out from backpacks. One girl whispered, "Is she serious?" But nobody stopped Evelyn. She picked up the marker, looked at the equation, and paused. Not out of hesitation, more like she was thinking deeply, like someone reading a familiar map. She squinted just slightly, then began to write. No showmanship, no flair, just deliberate strokes, one line after another. The room fell into an eerie stillness. The only sounds were the marker on the whiteboard and a chair creaking as someone leaned forward. Mr. Thompson crossed his arms, watching closely. His expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened. Evelyn broke down the steps out loud, her voice low and patient. "See, this here's a chain rule problem, but the trick is recognizing the inner function first. Once you isolate that, it becomes a lot cleaner." She moved like she'd done this before. Not just the problem, but the teaching. Her tone wasn't showy or smug. She explained things simply, clearly, like she'd spent more time teaching than mopping. When she finished, she capped the marker and stepped back. The board was filled with precise, well-organized work. She turned to Thompson, then to the class. "That's one way to do it," she said. And for a moment, no one moved. A junior in the back whispered, "She got it right." Mr. Thompson didn't say a word, not immediately. His mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. The silence grew louder than any joke he could have made. Evelyn nodded politely and walked back to the door, picked up her mop. No applause, no boast, just that quiet confidence, like she hadn't just turned the room upside down. But as Evelyn reached for the door, nobody expected what would come next. Nobody moved for a full 10 seconds. It felt like the class had been yanked out of a dream and dropped into something real, the kind of moment that doesn't belong in a high school classroom. Evelyn Harper, Mrs. Harper, as they'd always called her in passing, was halfway out the door when someone said it out loud. Wait, she just did that in her head? It was Marcus Bailey, a senior in the front row who usually didn't talk unless grades were involved. He wasn't joking. His eyes were wide. He looked at the board again, like the answer might have changed while he blinked. Thompson finally spoke, his voice flat, almost irritated. Well, she got the right answer, but his tone didn't carry the usual sarcasm. Something else had slipped in, something closer to confusion or worse, Discomfort. Evelyn glanced back. I spent a lot of time with numbers a long time ago, she said, then gave a small shrug. They never left. A few students laughed. Not at her this time, but because the tension was cracking. Evelyn didn't wait for a response. She left, mop in hand, shoes squeaking softly down the hallway like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just solved a college-level problem in under 3 minutes without so much as a calculator. That's when the phones came out. Someone had filmed the whole thing, Sophia Grant, Jr., third row, and she was already editing the clip before the bell even rang. In the hallway between periods, it was all anyone could talk about. Did you see Mrs. Harper? Thompson's face, man, looked like someone unplugged him. Where'd she learn that stuff? I thought she just cleaned floors. By lunch, the video had made it onto TikTok, then Instagram. It wasn't polished, just a shaky angle of Evelyn's hands moving across the board while a voice in the background whispered, "Yo, she's solving it." The caption read, "Our maintenance mom just smoked the calculus teacher." Some laughed, some stared, but the buzz kept growing. In the teacher's lounge, things weren't much quieter. "You're telling me she did a full derivative chain problem in her head?" asked Ms. Carter, the physics teacher. She was mid-bite into her sandwich, but had stopped chewing. "She did," muttered Mr. Ellis, the English teacher. "Didn't use notes, didn't even pause. It was like muscle memory." Thompson was at the corner table, pretending to grade papers. He didn't say anything. But Principal Morgan did. She's been helping out here for years. No one ever mentioned she had an academic background. People shook their heads. Nobody really knew much about Evelyn. She came in early, left late. Floors were always clean. Light bulbs never burned out more than a day. The woman worked in silence. But now, she wasn't just the parent behind the mop. Back in the hallway, a group of students waited outside the maintenance closet, not to complain about a spill or ask for a broom. They just wanted to talk to her. One kid, 12 years old, clutching his geometry book, asked, "Do you tutor, Mrs. Harper?" Evelyn blinked. "I haven't in a long time." "You should," the kid said. "That was cool." Evelyn chuckled, but it didn't feel dismissive, just surprised. In third period the next day, Thompson's mood was different. He didn't crack jokes. He didn't call on anyone randomly. He taught with his eyes fixed on the board, his voice more restrained than usual. Nobody said it outright, but everyone noticed. After class, Marcus walked up to him. "Mr. Thompson, that thing with Mrs. Harper yesterday, she used the same method you showed us last week. The chain rule, right?" Thompson nodded once. "Correct. Only she explained it better." Thompson didn't answer, but what truly shocked them wasn't the solution. It was what Evelyn said afterward. Evelyn Harper hadn't planned on making a scene. She never liked being the center of attention, not since she was young. So when students started waiting by the maintenance closet just to talk, or when teachers gave her long looks in the hallways, she felt off balance. She kept her head down and went about her usual routine, refilling paper towels, fixing a leaky faucet in the boys' locker room, wiping down cafeteria tables. But she could feel it. The change. A shift in how people looked at her, like they were trying to fit her into a new picture they hadn't known existed. It wasn't just curiosity. It was confusion, respect, regret maybe, and it made her uneasy. That afternoon, Principal Morgan asked her to stop by the front office. She walked in, still wearing her gloves, uniform a little damp from cleaning under the cafeteria sinks. She removed her cap as a sign of respect. Morgan leaned forward in his chair, hands clasped. "Evelyn, can I ask you something? Do you have a background in education or engineering?" Evelyn hesitated. She looked down for a second, like dusting off an old part of herself she hadn't visited in years. "I went to Notre Dame," she said quietly. "Mechanical engineering, full ride." The principal leaned back, eyebrows raised. "You serious?" "Was," Evelyn said. "Had plans. Things got complicated." And for the first time in a long while, she told the story. She'd grown up in Gary, Indiana. Smart kid, always loved how things worked. Motors, pulleys, anything she could take apart and put back together. Her mother, Lorraine, raised her and her two brothers on her own. She worked overtime at a textile plant and still found time to read to them every night. She believed in education like it was the only way out. Books first, always, she used to say. The world will try to shut the door, but if you bring your own key, they can't stop you. Evelyn earned that key, valedictorian state science fair winner, and then that scholarship to Notre Dame. Freshman year, she was already tutoring classmates. Professors saw her name on the attendance sheet and paid attention. But sophomore year, she got a call that changed everything. Her mother had collapsed at work. Doctors said it was late-stage cancer. By the time Evelyn got to the hospital, she could barely stay awake. "I can take care of it," she whispered. "Don't come home." She didn't listen. She took a semester off, then another. She picked up jobs, warehouse work, night shifts at a grocery store, anything to pay bills. Classes faded into the background. So did the dream. By the time her mother passed, things were scattered. She had no home to return to, no money to finish her degree, and no guidance counselor calling to ask why she hadn't come back. "I kept thinking I'd get back to school," Evelyn told Morgan. "But one thing turned into another. Life doesn't wait for you." The principal sat in silence. The story was heavy, not dramatic, just real. The kind of life you never hear unless you ask. Back at home, Evelyn kept her transcripts in a box under her bed, along with a weathered Notre Dame sweatshirt, an old calculator, and a photo of her and her mom at orientation day. She never touched it, but never threw it away. Now, all of it was being dragged into the light again. That evening, she sat on the back steps of her small apartment complex. The sky was dim, the kind of quiet where the only sound was the hum of far-off traffic. She sipped tea from a metal thermos and stared ahead. She hadn't thought about calculus in years, not since that last tutoring gig she picked up before dropping out. And now, here it was again, like an old friend knocking on her door. But one decision would derail everything she had worked so hard for back in college. Evelyn had made a promise to herself: take a short break, get her family back on track, then finish strong. But life didn't bend to plans, especially not the kind built on hope alone. After her mother passed, Evelyn returned to Gary, trying to piece things together. Her brothers were still in high school, barely getting by. Bills stacked up on the counter. The landlord wanted rent, and no one from Notre Dame called to ask where she'd gone. She took whatever job she could get: stockroom loader, janitor at a strip mall, overnight security at a shipping yard. Anything that paid enough to keep the lights on. School drifted further and further into the rear view. At first, she called the university now and then, asked about reapplying, transferring credits. They'd send forms. She'd fill them out, but she never mailed them. Something always got in the way. Then came the breaking point. It was late November. A man named Frank Booker, who owned a flooring company in South Bend, had offered Evelyn steady work. "You're sharp," he said. "Don't waste your time pushing brooms. I'll train you myself." Evelyn had hope again, a real shot. But the day before she was supposed to start, her youngest brother, Jamal, was caught in a fight at school. A stupid argument that escalated. He'd broken someone's nose. They threatened to expel him. Evelyn had to be there. No one else would show up for him. So she missed her first day at the flooring job. Frank gave the spot to someone else, and that was it. A door that could have opened slammed shut. She stopped chasing dreams after that, started chasing stability. Years blurred together, town to town, job to job. She never had a record, never got into trouble, just survived quietly. By the time she arrived in South Bend in her early 40s, she wasn't looking for a new beginning, just a steady paycheck. The school district offered benefits. Summers were quiet. She took the maintenance position without blinking. She liked it in her own way. Predictable, clean work. Students left her alone. Teachers smiled politely. She didn't expect friendship or connection. She didn't need it. She kept her head down, cleaned up messes, and disappeared before the last bell rang. But numbers never left her. Sometimes, when she passed a math class, she'd glance at the board, see a formula, and finish it in her head. It was like muscle memory, a part of her that stayed sharp, even when everything else got buried under routine. She'd go home, make herself a quiet dinner, grilled fish, brown rice, maybe some carrots, and flip through an old engineering book she kept tucked behind the cereal boxes, just to see if she still had it. She always did. She just never had a reason to show it, until Mr. Thompson called her out that day. And now, things were shifting, not just at school, but inside her. She thought about the kids who waited outside her supply closet with questions, thought about Marcus Bailey stopping by that morning with a folded piece of paper and saying, "Mrs. Harper, I tried to solve that same problem. Can you check it for me?" And Evelyn had, gently, carefully. She explained where Marcus had gone wrong without making him feel foolish. Marcus smiled when he finally understood, not just out of pride, but out of connection. That kind of thing stayed with you. But not everyone was thrilled. Thompson, for one, had gone quiet. Too quiet. Students noticed. Teachers noticed. Something about being shown up in front of your class by a woman you never thought twice about. It rattled him. He didn't lash out, but his tone got shorter, his patience thinner. And when someone mentioned Evelyn in the lounge, he changed the subject. He wasn't used to being outshined, especially not by someone who'd been invisible to him until now. But life had one more twist waiting, and this one brought her right back to math. The video didn't just make its way around Lincoln High, it made its way out. It started small. A local student page reposted it with the caption, "When your maintenance mom turns out to be smarter than your teacher." Then it landed on a regional education forum. By the weekend, it had crossed state lines. People online couldn't believe it. They weren't mocking Evelyn. They were in awe. "Woman broke it down cleaner than my college professor. Someone get this woman a classroom and a chalkboard, not a mop. Proof you never know someone's story." By Monday morning, Evelyn had no idea any of this was happening. She didn't follow social media. She still had a flip phone. When she arrived at work, the first thing she did was fix a jammed paper towel dispenser in the girls' bathroom, just like she always did on Mondays. But something felt different. Teachers paused their conversations when she walked past. Students nodded, not out of obligation, but with a strange kind of respect. A few even smiled, like they were seeing her for the first time. "Hey, Mrs. Harper," one girl called as she passed the library. "You're kind of famous now." Evelyn chuckled softly. "Don't believe everything you read." But when she turned the corner, Marcus Bailey was waiting there with two other students. One had a calculus book in his hands, open to a problem highlighted in pink. "Would you mind going through this with us?" Marcus asked. Evelyn looked around, confused. "You got a free period?" "We made time." And just like that, in the middle of a hallway lined with lockers and science fair posters, Evelyn sat down on the floor with three teenagers and walked them through a multivariable equation, step by step, line by line, not talking at them, talking with them. It wasn't loud, wasn't flashy, but something meaningful was happening. Down the hall, someone filmed it. No one told Evelyn. She wouldn't have liked that. Back in the office, Principal Morgan was on the phone with someone from the local school board. "Yes, that's correct. Evelyn Harper. Been with us 5 years. No, she's not faculty. She's maintenance." He paused, listening. "Well, I wouldn't call it unorthodox. I'd call it overlooked." Meanwhile, in the teacher's lounge, Thompson was reading an email forwarded by a parent, a link to the now viral video. No commentary, no subject line, just the link and the phrase, "Thought you'd want to see this." He closed the laptop without watching it. That afternoon, Morgan called Evelyn back in, offered her a seat. Evelyn stayed standing. "I've got a request from the board," the principal said. "They want to know if you'd be interested in running an after-school tutoring program. Small group, voluntary, just a trial run." Evelyn didn't answer right away. "You'd be paid, of course," Morgan added. "It's not about replacing your current role, just adding to it, sharing what you clearly still have." Evelyn looked down at her hands, calloused, clean, worn. "I haven't taught in a long time," she said. "You haven't stopped knowing," Morgan replied. Evelyn looked up. There was no pressure in the man's voice, just a simple invitation. "I'll think about it." That night, she pulled the old cardboard box out from under her bed, the one with the Notre Dame sweatshirt, the transcripts, the orientation photo. She hadn't touched it in years. She laid everything out on the table. The paper had yellowed a little, the edges curled, but the words were still there. That was the thing about knowledge. It didn't fade. It waited. She didn't need to go viral, didn't care about the views or the comments. But knowing she could still make a difference, that tugged at something. But while some were amazed, others weren't so thrilled by her rising attention. The more attention Evelyn received, the more the school began to shift. It started with the kids. They were the first to change. The ones who used to pass her in the hall without a second glance now stopped to say good morning. A few even asked for help on homework between classes. By the end of the second week, a small circle of students had unofficially formed what they called Harper sessions. They'd meet in the library after school, notebooks open, heads bent, listening as Evelyn explained concepts with clarity no one expected, but everyone respected. Then came the teachers. Most were supportive. Ms. Carter from physics was the first to swing by the library and watch her work with the students. "You've got a gift," she said softly, "and I don't mean just with numbers." But not everyone was thrilled. Mr. Thompson hadn't said a word about Evelyn since the day it all happened. In the teacher's lounge, he acted as if nothing had changed, but the bitterness was clear in his silences. He spoke in clipped sentences. He never looked Evelyn in the eye. He never mentioned calculus. When a parent-teacher meeting brought up Evelyn's growing influence with the students, Thompson said, "It's good they're interested in math. Let's just make sure we don't blur the line between instruction and inspiration." It sounded polite on the surface, but the tone behind it, everyone heard it. The principal didn't let it slide. He brought Thompson into his office one morning and laid it out plainly. "I know it stung," Morgan said, "but Evelyn didn't embarrass you. She inspired them." Thompson shifted in his seat. "She's not qualified. She's educated, more than we realized. And more importantly, she's reaching kids in a way none of us have." Thompson opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing to say, not really. Meanwhile, Evelyn kept to her routine. She didn't ask for a title, didn't want special treatment. But when the principal offered her a modest stipend to keep the tutoring sessions going, she accepted, not for the money, but because it felt right. She started carrying a small binder with her. Inside were pages of problems, blank worksheets, notes she'd written by hand. During breaks, she'd sit in the back corner of the cafeteria and scribble down formulas from memory, occasionally nodding at a passing student who'd call out, "Hey, Mrs. H." One afternoon, Sophia, the student who filmed the original clip, stopped her by the vending machines. "Did you ever want to be a teacher?" she asked. Evelyn took a second before answering. "I wanted to build things, teach later maybe. But life had different ideas." "Well," Sophia said, handing her a fresh mechanical pencil, "I think you're doing both now." Evelyn smiled. "Thank you." But behind all this good, there was tension brewing. Some parents had started calling the school. Most were supportive, but one anonymous complaint hit the board. Is it appropriate for a maintenance worker to tutor students in a school setting? Is she certified? Has she been background checked for instruction? Morgan handled it swiftly. "She's an employee of the district. She's done nothing wrong. And if concern was truly the motive, they'd have spoken with me directly." He never told Evelyn about the complaint. Still, Evelyn could feel something in the air. Not resentment, but resistance. Like some folks didn't know how to place her now that she didn't fit neatly into the background. Then, one afternoon, Thompson did something no one expected. He walked into the library during one of Evelyn's tutoring sessions, quietly watched from a distance as Evelyn explained integrals to a group of 4 students. After about 10 minutes, he stepped forward. "You mind if I sit in?" Thompson asked. Evelyn looked up. Her expression didn't change. She nodded toward the chair. "Long as you don't mind learning something." The students laughed, just enough to lighten the moment. Thompson smirked. For once, it wasn't mean. They sat together that day, said little, but it was a start. But Evelyn wasn't interested in titles. She had something else in mind. It wasn't about proving anything anymore. For Evelyn Harper, standing at the whiteboard in the library with students gathered around, it was never about redemption or revenge. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't trying to be remembered. She was just showing up for them. The kids, the ones who reminded her of the girl she used to be. Every Tuesday and Thursday, right after the final bell, that corner of the library filled with chatter, questions, scribbled notes, and wide eyes as Evelyn walked to students through math problems they once feared. Not because she had all the answers, but because she made them believe they could find those answers themselves. That's what stuck. There was Isaiah, the freshman who nearly failed algebra last semester, now solving quadratic equations without looking panicked. And Tasha, who used to hate math, now leading mini-sessions on weekends for her cousins, using Evelyn's notes. She never stood at the front like a traditional teacher. She sat beside them, talked with them, asked them questions before answering theirs. And gradually, more teachers started dropping by, not to supervise, just to learn how she was doing it. Ms. Carter asked if she could adopt some of her explanations for her class. Coach Rivera asked if Evelyn would help set up a summer prep group for incoming freshmen. Even Thompson, hesitant, prideful Thompson, stopped by regularly. Not every day, but often enough. He'd quietly offer an extra problem or two and eventually began offering words of encouragement to the kids. The edge in his voice had dulled. Something in him had softened. One day, during a tutoring session, Thompson lingered after the students left. "You know," he said, looking at the board, "I used to think this job made me important. The teaching gave me power." Evelyn didn't interrupt. "But you've reminded me what it's really about. Showing up, making it count." Evelyn just nodded. "We all lose our way sometimes." She didn't hold grudges. She didn't need to. Principal Morgan called her in again a month later. There was a proposal on the table to formalize her sessions into an elective class next semester, not for credit, but enrichment. A bridge between students and their own confidence. "We'll have to jump through some hoops," Morgan warned, "but if you're willing." Evelyn shook her head gently. "I appreciate it," she said, "but I don't need the title. I'd rather keep it simple. Let the kids come because they want to, not because it's on a schedule." Morgan nodded. "Then we'll support you however we can." Word spread beyond the school district. A local reporter stopped by to interview her. Evelyn kept it short. No dramatic story, no self-promotion. "I'm just showing them what they already have inside," she said. "Sometimes it takes a little time to see it." In the spring, Lincoln High hosted its annual student showcase. There were science projects, art displays, choir performances, and in one corner of the gym, a booth titled Harper's Table displayed student-written reflections on math, life, and confidence. Dozens of students had written about how Evelyn helped them see more in themselves, not because she gave them answers, but because she listened and believed. By the end of the night, people weren't asking, "Is she the maintenance worker?" anymore. They were saying, "That's Mrs. Harper. She didn't wear a suit. She didn't give a speech." She stood by the table, smiled, and thanked the students who came by. Later that evening, back at her apartment, she pulled out the old Notre Dame sweatshirt from the box under her bed. She didn't put it on. She folded it neatly, placed it in a new storage bin, and added a folder filled with student thank you notes beside it. Legacy, she realized, isn't about titles. It's about what you leave behind in others. She didn't need to finish school to teach. She didn't need a degree to lead. She just needed to show up every day and care. And that's exactly what she planned to keep doing. Thanks for listening to Evelyn's story. If it moved you, if it reminded you of someone you've overlooked, or someone who believed in you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs it. Because sometimes, the biggest minds are hiding in the quietest places.